Welcome to part 17 of Was I in a Cult? So I don't even think I realized the irony of the fact that in the last video I talked about how I raised such a stink about going to work in the nursery, but then went and got a job at a preschool. I'm also barely connecting the dots of the fact that I was under such a strong control by my grandfather still, and there had been 18, 19 years of my grandfather controlling everything in my life and me trying to fight against that for so long. And then now all of a sudden there's this church that's fighting for the power and control over me as well. And at that time, I was just fighting to be free. I wanted to be free of all of this control. Now when I'm piecing this together, it's kind of like, you know how a lot of times we'll see that people that get out of an abusive situation, they turn around and they get right into another one. And I feel like this is the same sort of situation. Like, I was under such verbal abuse and such controlling, dominating behavior within my family that it was seriously kind of easy for me to go ahead and fall back into it as I'm trying to escape from it. It's because it's all we know. Like, that's what we grew up with. If we grew up with a controlling and abusive environment around us, there's something weird that happens where it seems like we're stuck in this circle and cycle of continuing to put ourselves back into that same situation over and over again. And when you're trying to break free, it's like you're looking for a savior, you're looking for a way out. And then all of these other people come in and take advantage and manipulate you and take advantage of your situation. So when you hear me say my parents, I'm talking about my grandparents because my grandparents raised me. And that's a whole nother story that maybe I'll get into at another time. But when I say my parents, I'm talking about my grandparents. My paternal grandparents, my father's parents, are the ones that raised me. Now, at the time, being 19 years old, think about who had more power over me. Obviously, my grandparents had more power over me than the church because my grandparents had 18 years of controlling me as opposed to my church that I just entered into, and I was only there for like 3 or 4 months. And the other aspect of control is the fact that I was financially dependent upon my grandparents still. They were still paying for my insurance and helping me with my car and different things like that. So definitely I was still under their control and power and authority. I was just out of high school and I just wasn't making enough money to go move out on my own yet. So at the time there was also several people in the church suggesting that I go into the women's home, basically so that the church could have more control over me instead of my grandfather. Fortunately, I was just like, I would rather live at home than follow the rules of the women's home because I had talked to some people in the women's home and they were only allowed like 3-minute showers, and I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. I think I even practiced 3-minute showers at home. I barely got in the shower. Like, I barely got my clothes off in 3 minutes. How am I gonna take a whole shower in 3 minutes? So in survival mode, I obviously took the easier way out. I chose the control and domination that I've had for 18 years over this new church control that would take over me if I moved into the home. So many people in the church had so many things to say. Like, you talk to anybody in the church and everyone had a suggestion or opinion or some advice to give to you. All right, so let's go into the fact that I started this job at a Christian preschool. So I'm going to elaborate a little bit more about how I got this job. So I remember when my grandfather said, get out of the house and go get a job, it was just kind of like, it's his house, he can tell me what to do and where to go. So if he's telling me to get out of the house, then I'm getting out of the house and I'm going to go look for a job, right? So I get out of the house and I remember very specifically getting in the car and driving down the street, and I remember pulling over around the block because I was like, where am I going? Like, I don't even know where I'm going. And so I pulled over to the side of the street and I was like praying, right? So I was just praying, okay, God, If you want me to get a job, please open the doors and show me where to go. I don't know what to do. Where am I going? And then I didn't have a phone or anything, and I couldn't make a phone call before I left the house. There were no cell phones at this time, mind you. So I think I just drove to my friend Lena's house. Like I showed up unexpectedly, like uninvited. And I was like, Lena, I need help. Like, my grandfather told me to go out and get a job, but I have no cell phone and I don't even have much gas, and I don't have gas to be driving around anywhere to go look for a job. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, um, I was like, do you have a phone book? And then she's like, yeah. And so she pulls out the yellow pages, and I'm going through the yellow pages. I think it was Lena's house. I'm not sure. It was one of my friends' house. I don't know. I might have had to go to a couple friends' houses because maybe one of them wasn't home, and I don't remember where I ended up, but I do remember just making phone calls and asking um if I could use the phone book to like look things up to try to find a job. And I think I started in the A under Yellow Pages, and I just kept like I went through the different businesses that started with A, different businesses that started with B, and I started just calling like, are you hiring? Are you hiring? Are you hiring? Like I just started calling everybody asking if they were hiring, and I think I got to see, and there was like Christian preschool was like the first thing that stuck out. So I was like, oh, Christian preschools. Oh, okay. Well, maybe I could do that. I don't know. You know what I mean? And so I was like, I'm like going through there, and I'm just calling all these Christian preschools, right? And asking if they have, you know, any, if they have any jobs available. And there was like, come and fill out an application, we'll keep your file, your, you know, your application on file or resume on file. So it's like, okay. So I think I went to a couple, and then I was on my way home, and I was like, I don't know what to do because my grandpa said not to come home until I had a job. So I was like, I'm supposed to go home with a job today. So I remember on the way home, right around the block from my house, there was this one last school, and it was called Rainbow Christian Preschool. And so I was like, what's that? So I just was like, oh, one more school. It's literally around the block from my house. Like I could walk here. I was like, so I went in, and I go inside, and I said, hey, are you guys looking to hire anyone? Because I'm looking for a job, and I just finished high school. And so I'm talking to this lady, and she's like, ah, she's like, it's like a miracle. And I'm like, what is she talking about? And she's like, oh my gosh. She's like, we just, you know, found out that one of our teacher's aides is going to be leaving, and we didn't have anybody replace her, and we didn't know what we were going to do. So oh my gosh, this is just so God that you just walked in and like, yes, can you start tomorrow? And I was like, okay. I really don't think my grandpa expected this, but I go home and I'm like, okay, grandpa, I got a job. I'm starting tomorrow. It's around the block. And he was just like, wow, good. I mean, it was just the weirdest thing. Like, it was kind of cool at the same time. Like I really at that point was just like, wow, God helped me get a job. And I thought that was a really cool testimony. And I think I started to tell some people at church, and I think they were a little concerned, which is like why. Like they didn't really want me to have a job because then I wasn't going to be as available to them as I would normally. But they were like, oh, that's good. But, you know, like, make sure that you stay faithful and committed here, and you keep coming to all the services and all the events that we have. It was like they were afraid that I might just start working and actually stop volunteering and doing things at the church. They're like, but it doesn't interfere with any of your responsibilities here in the church, right? And I'm like, no, not that I know of. It's like Monday through Friday, like 8 to 5. And they're like, oh, okay, good. As long as you don't work on Sundays. And in my mind, I'm just like, so I miss a church service. I'm here every day. Like, what is the problem? They're like, well, you know, a lot of people get jobs and then all of a sudden they stop coming to church. So just be careful. Okay, I'll be careful. It might be a cult if your church is not happy for you if you get a job.